Tai-Jun Park stared at the blue envelope on his desk. It wasn't paper. It was some kind of alien material that shifted colors when touched. His small office in Seoul's business district suddenly felt too quiet. Outside, the evening traffic moved under neon signs and holographic advertisements featuring both human and alien products. He picked up the envelope again, remembering the strange way the alien messenger had bowed. Clearly a studied attempt at human customs. 5 years after the First Contact War, aliens trying to copy human gestures still felt odd to him. "Just open it," he muttered to himself, running a hand through his short black hair. The military cut hadn't grown out much since he'd left the service 2 years ago. Some habits died hard. The letter inside glowed faintly. Asterisk to former Special Operations Captain Tai-Jun Park. Asterisk. Asterisk. The Galactic Academy of Advanced Species formally invites you to join our faculty as the first human combat arts instructor. Your experience in both the First Contact War and subsequent peace negotiations makes you uniquely qualified for this position. Asterisk. Tai-Jun laughed. He'd been expecting another private security contract. Not this. His eyes moved to the old photo on his desk, his Special Forces team from the war. Half of them hadn't made it home. The other half, like him, were trying to find their place in a world that had suddenly become much bigger and stranger. His phone buzzed. The name Hannah Kim flashed on the screen. He'd met her during the peace talks. She'd been one of the first human-alien relations experts. "I'm guessing you got the letter," she said when he answered. "You knew about this. I recommended you." Her voice was warm but professional. "The Academy needs someone who understands both combat and teaching. Someone who's seen the worst of war but still believes in peace." Tai-Jun walked to his office window. In the distance, the massive form of an alien trading ship hung in the evening sky, its lights mixing with the stars. "I'm not a teacher, Hannah. I'm barely keeping this security consulting business running. You trained new recruits during the war. Some of the best soldiers came from your program." She paused. "And you were the first to figure out how to fight the Saurians without killing them." His hand went to the scar on his neck automatically. That had been a hard lesson. Learning that some alien species could regenerate limbs made non-lethal combat a better choice. His team had adapted, created new techniques. They'd saved more lives than they'd taken by the end. "The Academy isn't just any school," Hannah continued. "It's where the galaxy's future leaders learn. They need to understand humans, not just our diplomacy, but our ways of thinking, our adaptability, even our ways of fighting." A memory flashed. His team teaching their alien allies human martial arts during quiet moments between battles. The way their eyes had widened, all 6 of them, in some cases, when they realized how humans could adapt their techniques to any body type. "The pay is good," Hannah added. "Very good. And they're offering an apartment on the station." Tai-Jun looked around his small office. The security contracts were getting scarcer. Most clients wanted flashy alien tech and guards these days, not ex-military humans. When do they need an answer? Soon. The new term starts in 2 weeks. She hesitated. "There's another human there already, a student named Du Young. He says it's strange, but amazing. Like seeing the future happen around you every day." Tai-Jun picked up the photo of his old team again. What would they think of him teaching aliens how to fight? Master Sergeant Lee would probably laugh himself sick. But Captain Yoon, she'd understand. She'd always said that understanding your enemy was the first step to making them your friend. "Send me the details," he said finally. "I'm not promising anything, but—" "You'll do it," Hannah said confidently. "You're too curious not to." "And Tai-Jun, pack some running shoes. I hear the artificial gravity takes some getting used to." After hanging up, Tai-Jun stood at the window for a long time, watching the alien ship's lights blink against the darkening sky. Teaching at an alien school. It was crazy. Dangerous, maybe. Definitely strange. But as he looked at the glowing letter again, a smile crept onto his face. For the first time since the war, He felt something he'd almost forgotten, the excitement of stepping into the unknown. Maybe it was time for a new kind of adventure. Tai-jun's first thought upon seeing the Galactic Academy was that pictures didn't do it justice. The space station was enormous, a spinning wheel of silver and glass that caught the light of nearby stars. Small ships moved around it like busy insects, carrying students and supplies. His transport ship approached a docking bay, and his stomach did a strange flip as the artificial gravity shifted. The pilot, a tall blue-skinned alien, turned all four of its eyes toward him. "First time in space, human." "No," Tai-jun said, gripping his seat tighter. "But usually I had a parachute." The alien made a whistling sound that might have been laughter. The docking bay swallowed their ship, and Tai-jun got his first real look at his new workplace. Everything was bigger than human scale. The corridors were wide enough for creatures 3 times his size, and the ceiling curved high overhead. The air smelled clean but strange, like flowers he'd never encountered. A group of students passed by. Some walked, others floated, and one rolled like a ball. They all stared at him with various kinds of eyes, tentacles, or sensory organs. Tai-jun kept his face neutral and nodded politely. "Ah, you must be Park Tai-jun." A booming voice echoed down the corridor. Principal Engster was even taller in person than in the video calls. Her blue skin sparkled with what looked like tiny stars, and her long neck curved gracefully as she bent down to greet him. "Welcome to the Academy. I trust your journey was comfortable." "Very, thank you," Tai-jun said, trying not to stare at the way her skin glittered. "Though I think I need to adjust to the gravity." "Oh yes, we keep it at 0.8 Earth standard. A compromise for our many species. Professor Kuehl is waiting in the combat training area. But first, let me show you to your quarters." They walked through more huge corridors. Principal Engster pointed out various facilities: the main lecture halls, the medical bay, equipped for all known species, and something called the zero-gravity relaxation sphere that Tai-jun decided to ask about later. His quarters were interesting. The door was sized for humans, but inside was a mixture of alien and Earth furnishings. The bed was normal, but the chairs looked designed for tails. The bathroom had 3 different kinds of fixtures, and he wasn't sure which ones were meant for humans. "We try our best to make it comfortable," Principal Engster said. Our other human, Du-young, helped with the specifications, but he may have been creative with his suggestions. As if summoned by his name, a young man appeared in the doorway. Du-young Lee had a friendly face and wore what looked like a standard Earth University sweatshirt, except it changed colors every few seconds. "Welcome to the madhouse," Du-young said with a grin. "I see they gave you the multi-species bathroom. The middle one is for humans. Don't use the left one unless you can breathe water." Tai-jun found himself smiling back. It was good to see another human face, even if this one seemed far too amused by everything. "I'll leave you two to chat," Principal Engster said. "Professor Kuehl expects you in 1 hour, Instructor Park. Du-young can show you the way." After she left, Du-young flopped onto one of the tail chairs, somehow making it work. "So, ex-military, huh? You're braver than me. I just teach Earth languages. The worst that happens is someone accidentally insults themselves in Korean." "And what's the combat training area like?" Tai-jun asked, unpacking his small bag. Du-young's grin widened. "Oh, you'll love it. Professor Kuehl is. Well, you'll see. Just remember, if she starts clicking her teeth, step back. Way back." Tai-jun paused. "She's Saurian." "Yep. But don't worry. She only eats meat on weekends." Seeing Tai-jun's expression, Du-young laughed. "That was a joke. Mostly. Come on, I'll show you around before your meeting. Fair warning, the cafeteria is an adventure. Never eat anything blue that moves on its own." As they walked through the station, Tai-jun felt that familiar mix of tension and curiosity he used to get before missions. This was definitely going to be interesting, if he could survive the first day. At least he hadn't seen any anti-gravity toilets. Tai-Jun stood in the combat training area, facing his first class. 20 alien students watched him with various types of eyes, tentacles, and sensing organs. The room was huge, with padded floors and walls that could change firmness as needed. Professor Kuehl, the tall Saurian instructor, stood in the corner, her scaled tail twitching as she watched. Today, Tai-Jun began. We'll start with basic human defensive stances. A student with 4 arms raised one of them. Instructor Park, why do humans only have 2 arms? Isn't that inefficient? Tai-Jun took a deep breath. We make do with what we have. Now, please spread out and... But how do you maintain balance? Asked another student, this one floating slightly above the ground. Without a hover system. Our legs and inner ear handle balance, Tai-Jun explained patiently. Now, if everyone cooled. A crystalline being in the back chimed like a bell. Is it true humans can't regrow limbs? How do you fight without backup body parts? Professor Kuehl's teeth clicked once, and the class fell silent. Tai-Jun nodded gratefully to her. Let's try something simple, he said. I'll demonstrate a basic defensive move. Would anyone like to help? A tall, muscular student with purple skin stepped forward. I will, instructor. I am Mick from the Gravity World Keras. Tai-Jun nodded. Good. Try to grab my shoulder. Slowly, please. Mick reached out. His arm moved faster than Tai-Jun expected. He'd forgotten about different muscle densities. Tai-Jun shifted his weight to dodge, but in the lighter gravity, he moved too far. Mick's hand caught his shirt, and both of them stumbled. I'm sorry, Mick said, steadying Tai-Jun with strength that could have crushed a car. I forgot humans are fragile. I'm not fragile, Tai-Jun said, straightening his shirt. I just need to adjust toe. Watch out. His warning came too late. Mick, stepping back, bumped into a smaller student with delicate wing membranes. The student squeaked in alarm and released a cloud of defensive spores. 3 other students began sneezing, and one turned an alarming shade of green. Professor Kuehl's tail swished as she moved forward. Perhaps we should end early. No, Tai-Jun said firmly. He'd faced worse in basic training. Everyone take 5 steps back, please. Let's start over. The door opened, and Hannah Kim walked in. She took one look at the chaos and pulled out a small device. It hummed, and the spores in the air disappeared. Having fun? She asked Tai-Jun. Learning experience, he muttered. Then he turned to the class. Everyone watch carefully. Director Kim, would you help me demonstrate? Hannah smiled and took a ready stance. They'd trained together during the war. She knew what he was thinking. Moving slowly, Tai-Jun demonstrated a simple wrist lock. Notice how this technique uses the opponent's strength against them. It works on any joint that bends. He released Hannah's wrist. Now, pair up with someone of similar body type. Move at quarter speed. This time, the students paid attention. Even the floating ones found partners with similar movement patterns. Tai-Jun walked among them, making corrections. Gentle with the tentacles. Yes, that's good. No, don't use your stinger. Excellent pivot there. Maybe no acid spray inside the classroom. By the end of the hour, 3 students could perform the move perfectly. 5 more were getting close. The rest were at least trying without causing any more chemical reactions. Professor Kuehl approached as the students filed out. Interesting method, Instructor Park. Though perhaps next time we should separate the toxic species from the rest. Tai-Jun wiped his forehead. I have a lot to learn about teaching aliens. And they have much to learn about humans, Hannah said. She handed him a datapad. Here's the complete biology files for all your students, including what not to do if they panic. Thanks. Tai-Jun looked at the long list of species names and special notes. You know, in the war, we just had to worry about not getting eaten or dissolved. Teaching is harder than war, Professor Kuehl said, showing her teeth in what might have been a smile. But when it works, she gestured to where two students were still practicing, helping each other with the stance. Taijun nodded. Maybe he could do this after all. He just needed to avoid any more defensive spores, and possibly invest in some acid-proof shoes. The Academy's library was quiet except for the soft hum of floating data screens. Taejun sat at a human-sized desk, reviewing student progress reports. After 2 weeks of teaching, things were finally starting to make sense. A shadow fell across his desk. He looked up to see Mick, his purple-skinned student, shifting nervously from foot to foot. "Instructor Park," Mick said softly, or as softly as someone from a high-gravity world could manage. "We found something about you on the information network." Taejun's stomach tightened. "Oh, the Battle of New Seoul," Mick said. "You were there. You led the team that stopped the Saurian advance." Taejun closed his eyes for a moment. He'd known this would come up eventually. "Yes, I was there." "But," Mick looked confused. "The records say your team captured 30 Saurian warriors without killing any of them. No one had done that before." More students were gathering now. Even the librarian, a tall being made mostly of light, had turned to listen. "We learned to adapt," Taejun said simply. "The Saurians were too strong to fight head-on, so we found another way." "Show us," said a voice from the back. A group of senior students had joined the crowd. Their leader, a tall crystalline being named Rix, stepped forward. "Show us how humans really fight." Taejun recognized the challenge in Rix's tone. The senior combat students had been watching his classes, always with slight smirks on their faces, or whatever passed for faces in their species. "This isn't about fighting," Taejun said. "It's about understanding." "Then help us understand," Rick said. "In the advanced combat arena. Now." Do Young appeared at Taejun's elbow. "You don't have to prove anything," he whispered. "They're just trying to start trouble." But Taejun was already standing. He remembered similar challenges during the war. Aliens who thought humans were too soft, too weak. Sometimes the only way to teach was to demonstrate. "All right," he said, "but we do this my way." The advanced combat arena was bigger than his classroom, with variable gravity controls and terrain that could change shape. Professor Kuehl was there, along with several other instructors who had apparently heard about the challenge. "Standard safety protocols," Professor Kuehl announced. "No lethal moves, no permanent damage." Rix and 2 other senior students took positions around Taejun. Their crystalline bodies glowed with combat energy. "Begin," Professor Kuehl called. The first student launched forward, faster than most eyes could follow. But Taejun wasn't there anymore. He moved like water, sliding past the attack and tapping the student's central mass with 2 fingers. The crystalline being froze, surprised. "Pressure points work on all species," Taejun said calmly, "if you know where to look." The second student tried to circle behind him. Taejun dropped and swept his legs in a move that looked like a dance. The student crashed into the first one, their crystalline forms chiming. Rix moved last, more cautious now. "Impressive tricks," he chimed. "But tricks won't." Taejun didn't let him finish. He rolled forward, came up inside Rix's guard, and pressed 3 specific spots in quick succession. Rix's glow dimmed, and his arms locked at his sides. "Not tricks," Taejun said. "Understanding. We studied every species we fought, learned their strengths, their weaknesses, their pressure points. Then we adapted our techniques to use that knowledge." He released the pressure points, and the students stumbled back. "That's what humans do best," he continued. "We adapt, we learn, and we share what we learn. That's why I'm here, not to show off, but to teach." The room was silent. Then Professor Kuehl started clicking her teeth, her version of applause. Other students joined in with their own species signs of approval. Rix's glow had returned to normal. He bowed slightly. "We underestimated you, instructor. And humans in general, it seems. A common mistake, Tai-Jun said with a small smile. Now, who wants to learn how to find universal pressure points? Every hand, tentacle, and appendage in the room went up. Later, as students practiced in pairs, Hannah appeared beside him. "Well handled," she said, "though I think you just made your classes a lot more popular." Tai-Jun watched as Rix helped a younger student perfect a hold. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing." "No," Hannah agreed. "It's not bad at all." The academy's main hall buzzed with excitement. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing the announcement everyone had been waiting for. The interspecies combat tournament was starting in 1 month. Tai-Jun stood at the back of the hall, watching his students cluster around the sign-up screens. Professor Kuehl slithered up beside him, her scales gleaming under the bright lights. "Your students seem eager," she said, watching Mick carefully enter his name in the registration system. "Though they may be in for a surprise. The tournament has traditional expectations." "What kind of expectations?" Tai-Jun asked. "Each species is supposed to fight in their traditional style," she explained. "The crystalline beings use their energy forms, the gravity worlders use their strength, the floaters use their aerial techniques." She paused. No one has ever entered using techniques from another species. Tai-Jun watched as more of his students signed up. They were practicing human moves even now, their different bodies adapting the techniques in unique ways. "There's no rule against it, is there?" Professor Kuehl's teeth clicked in amusement. "No, but the traditional combat instructors won't be happy." As if on cue, a group of senior instructors approached. Their leader, a massive being made of what looked like living metal, spoke in a voice like grinding gears. "Instructor Park, I see your students are entering the tournament. How interesting." "Thank you, Instructor Vrel," Tai-Jun said politely. "They've worked hard. But surely they will compete using their own species' techniques." Vrel's metal face couldn't show expression, but his tone was clear. It would be inappropriate to do otherwise. Before Tai-Jun could answer, Mick stepped forward. "We're using human techniques because they work. They make us better fighters." "Better?" Vrel's surface rippled. "You would abandon thousands of years of your people's combat traditions for human tricks." "Not abandon," Tai-Jun cut in. "Adapt. Combine. Make something new." Other students gathered behind Mick. Rix's crystalline form glowed with determination. "We want to show what we've learned, what humans have taught us." Vrel looked at the other traditional instructors. "This is unprecedented. We must consult the tournament committee." After they left, Du Young appeared with a worried look. That didn't sound good. The traditional instructors had a lot of influence. "Then we'll just have to be better," Tai-Jun said. He turned to his students. "Training starts tomorrow at dawn. No excuses." The next few weeks were intense. Tai-Jun worked with each student, helping them blend human techniques with their natural abilities. Mick learned to use his gravity world strength in controlled bursts. Rix found ways to channel his crystal energy through human-style moves. Even Professor Kuehl helped, offering her combat arena for extra practice sessions. "They may not like change," she said, watching the students train. "But they cannot stop it." One evening, as Tai-Jun was finishing a late training session, Hannah found him in the practice room. "The traditional instructors tried to ban human techniques from the tournament," she said without preamble. "But Principal Engster stopped them. She said innovation and adaptation are part of the Academy's mission." Tai-Jun nodded, relief washing over him. "How are the betting odds?" Hannah laughed. "Very much against your students, which means someone could make a lot of money by betting on them." "Did you?" "Of course." She smiled. "I believe in human adaptability. And in you." Tai-Jun watched his students practicing in pairs, different species working together, teaching each other, finding new ways to move and fight. They weren't just learning techniques, they were breaking down barriers that had existed for centuries. "We'll be ready," he said, Win or lose, we'll show them something they've never seen before. That's what humans do best, Hannah said. We surprise people. As if to prove her point, Mick successfully performed a perfect human flip kick, something that should have been impossible for someone from a high-gravity world. His landing shook the floor, but his grin was pure human triumph. The tournament was coming, and Taejun's students were ready to make history. The news spread through the academy like wildfire. Protesters had gathered at the station's main docking bay. They carried signs in various alien languages, all with the same message: keep combat pure and stop human influence. Taejun watched the security feed from Principal Engster's office. The crowd was growing larger by the hour. They're mostly from the traditional combat alliance, Principal Engster explained. Her usual sparkle was dimmed today. They're demanding we cancel the tournament or ban human techniques. Can they do that? Taejun asked. No, but they can make things difficult. They've already contacted our major donors. She sighed. Some are threatening to pull their funding. Do Young burst into the office, forgetting to knock. Sorry, but you need to see this. He held up his datapad. On the screen, an alien news channel was running a story about the academy. Sources claim human combat techniques are dangerous and untested, the reporter said. Several parents have expressed concern about their children learning these aggressive methods. Taejun felt his jaw tighten. Aggressive? We focus on defense and control. The truth doesn't matter to them, Hannah said, entering the office. They're afraid of change, and some of them still haven't gotten over losing to humans in the war. Do Young lowered his voice. There's something else. I've been tracking the academy's internal communications for my language studies. Someone's been deleting security records and changing student files. Principal Engster's head snapped up. What kind of changes? Small things at first, but yesterday they tried to change the tournament rules in the main computer, and I traced the access codes. He hesitated. They came from Instructor Varel's office. The metal instructor. Taejun remembered their confrontation. He's that opposed to human techniques. It's bigger than that, Hannah said. Varel has connections to the purist movement. They think different species should stay separate. No mixing of cultures or techniques. Outside the office window, more protest ships were arriving at the station. Principal Engster's skin darkened with worry. We can't prove Varel is behind this without more evidence, she said. And the tournament starts in 3 days. Taejun thought about his students. They were training harder than ever, excited to show what they'd learned. Mick had even taught his little sister some basic defensive moves over video call. What if we could prove human techniques are safer? He asked. Show everyone that we're teaching control, not aggression. How? Do Young asked. A demonstration. Before the tournament. Open to the public and the media. Taejun turned to Hannah. Remember how we trained peace officers after the war? Show them the techniques in action. Hannah's eyes lit up. Yes, and we can demonstrate with different species, show how the moves adapt to each body type. Principal Engster's sparkle began to return. I'll arrange it, but be careful. If Varel is truly behind this, he won't stop at computer tricks, Hannah finished. That evening, Taejun called his students together in the practice room. He told them about the protesters, the political pressure, and the planned demonstration. This is bigger than the tournament now, he said. We're fighting for the right to learn from each other, to grow beyond our separate traditions. Rix's crystal form pulsed with determination. Then we'll show them, all of us together. Mick nodded, his purple skin darkening with emotion. They think humans are aggressive. We'll show them what real strength is, the strength to change, to adapt, to unite. As his students began practicing with renewed energy, Taejun felt proud. They weren't just learning to fight. They were breaking down walls that had stood for generations. But as he watched the protest ships through the window, he couldn't shake a feeling of unease. If Varel and his supporters were willing to hack the Academy's computers, what else might they do to stop the tournament? The next 3 days would test everything they had learned about fighting, about each other, and about standing together against those who feared change. The day before the tournament started badly, Taejun woke up gasping. The air in his quarters felt thin, and warning lights flashed on the environmental controls. His communication device buzzed. It was Du Young. "Are you okay? The life support in the human section is failing." Taejun grabbed his emergency breathing mask. "Get to the main hall. Something's wrong." The corridors were dark, lit only by emergency lights. As Taejun ran, he saw other humans using breathing masks, moving toward the main hall. The alien students watched with concern, unable to help. In the main hall, Principal Inkster was trying to calm everyone. "Our engineers are working on it. The human quarters will have air again soon." "This was no accident," Hannah said, her voice muffled through her mask. "The life support systems have triple backups. Someone had to disable all of them." Taejun's military training kicked in. "Where's Instructor Vrel?" "In the combat arena," Professor Kuehl said, slithering up to them. "Preparing for the tournament," he claims. Taejun looked at his students gathered nearby. "Mick, Rix, come with me. The rest of you, help get the humans to safe areas." They ran to the combat arena. The doors were locked, but Rix used his crystalline form to interface with the control panel. Inside, they found Vrel at the main control station. "Step away from the controls," Taejun said firmly. Vrel's metal form rippled. "Ah, the human teacher. Still breathing, I see. Unfortunate. We know what you did," Mick said, his gravity world strength making the floor shake as he stepped forward. "What I did?" Vrel's voice was cold. "I'm protecting our traditions, our way of life. Humans don't belong here, teaching their chaos to our youth." "Chaos." Taejun kept his voice calm despite the thin air in his mask. "We teach control, adaptation, unity. Unity is weakness." Vrel's metal surface sparked with anger. "Each species should stay pure, strong in their own ways." He pressed a button, and the arena's gravity began to shift wildly. Mick stumbled, even his gravity world strength overwhelmed by the random changes. But Taejun had trained for this. In the war, he'd fought in broken gravity fields. He moved with the changes, flowing like water between gravity waves. Rix understood instantly. Using human techniques, he adapted his crystal form to the shifting gravity, creating anchor points as he moved. Together, they approached Vrel from different angles. The metal instructor lashed out with powerful strikes, but they deflected them using the gravity shifts themselves. "You see," Taejun said between moves, "this is what humans teach. Not chaos. Adaptation." Mick had caught on too. Instead of fighting the gravity, he used it to launch himself forward at just the right moment. His impact knocked Vrel away from the controls. Rix interfaced with the system again, and the gravity returned to normal. Security forces rushed in, led by Professor Kuehl. "The life support systems are back online," she announced, "and we found Vrel's sabotage program in the computer." As security took Vrel away, Principal Inkster arrived. Her skin was flashing with angry colors. "The tournament committee has reviewed the evidence," she said. "Vrel and his supporters are banned from the academy." And she smiled, her sparkle returning. They were very impressed by how everyone worked together during the crisis. Taejun looked at his students. They had responded perfectly, using what they'd learned to help others and stop the sabotage. Human techniques, alien abilities, all working as one. "That's what the academy should be about," he said, removing his breathing mask as fresh air filled the room. "Not staying pure, but growing stronger together." Later, as engineers checked the repaired systems, Hannah found him in the practice room. "The news channels are calling it a victory for interspecies cooperation," she said. "Even some of the protesters are changing their minds." Taejun watched Mick and Rix demonstrating their gravity-shifting moves to younger students. "Maybe that was the real lesson," he said. not just teaching them to fight, but showing them how to stand together. And tomorrow? Hannah asked. Tai-Jun smiled. Tomorrow we show everyone what humans and aliens can do together. The tournament would begin in 12 hours. And now, they had even more to prove. The tournament arena was packed. News cameras floated in the air, broadcasting across the galaxy. After yesterday's events, everyone wanted to see what would happen. Tai-Jun stood with his students in the preparation area. "Remember your training," he said. "Show them what we can do together." Mick was first. His opponent was another gravity worlder, bigger and stronger. The traditional fighter charged forward, expecting to overpower Mick easily. But Mick moved like water, just as Tai-Jun had taught him. He redirected his opponent's strength, using human techniques mixed with his natural power. The crowd went silent as the bigger fighter found himself thrown to the mat. "Impossible," someone shouted. "A gravity worlder cannot move like that." Mick helped his opponent up, showing the respect Tai-Jun had taught them. "Not impossible," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Just different." Next was Rick's. His crystalline form sparkled as he faced a traditional energy fighter. The other fighter launched powerful energy blasts, but Rick's moved through them using human defensive patterns. "Watch closely," Professor Kuehl said to the audience. "See how he combines crystal energy with human movements." Rick's victory was quick and elegant. He never attacked directly. Instead, he let his opponent tire himself out, then used a simple human hold to end the match. More of Tai-Jun's students competed. Each one showed something new. Floating species using human ground techniques in the air, small species adapting moves meant for larger bodies, strong species learning gentle control. In the stands, the protesters from yesterday watched in silence. Some began nodding with understanding. Others talked excitedly about the new possibilities they were seeing. "They're starting to understand," Hannah said, standing beside Tai-Jun. "This is more than just fighting." She was right. The tournament had become a showcase of cooperation. Between matches, students from different species practiced together, teaching each other new combinations of moves. Even the traditional instructors were paying close attention. One of them approached Tai-Jun during a break. "We were wrong," the instructor said. Their eye stalks bobbed in embarrassment. "These human techniques, they don't destroy our traditions. They make them stronger." Principal Engster's voice boomed through the arena. "Let this tournament be remembered," she said, "not for who wins or loses, but for what we've learned. Together, we are more than our separate traditions." The final match was about to begin. Mick stood ready to face the defending champion, a fighter who had never lost. The champion was a mix of metal and energy, like Vral but more flexible. "Remember," Tai-Jun told Mick quietly, "you're not just fighting for yourself." Mick nodded. "For all of us. For what we can become together." The match began. The champion was incredibly strong, combining multiple fighting styles. But Mick stayed calm, using everything he had learned. When the champion attacked high, Mick went low. When energy blasts came at him, he redirected them. He moved like a human but hit like a gravity worlder. It was something entirely new. The winning move was one they had practiced for weeks. Mick used the champion's own energy to create an opening, then applied a perfect human joint lock. The champion fell. The arena exploded with cheers. Not just for Mick's victory, but for what it meant. Species that had never worked together were standing side by side, celebrating. Professor Kuehl found Tai-Jun in the chaos. "You've started something," she said, her teeth clicking happily. "Something that can't be stopped." Tai-Jun watched as his students were surrounded by others wanting to learn their techniques. Mick was already showing a group how to combine different styles. "That was the goal," he said, "not to replace their ways, but to show them new possibilities." "And now?" Hannah asked, joining them. Tai-Jun smiled as he saw more students signing up for next term's classes. "Now we keep teaching. Keep learning from each other. This is just the beginning." On the main screen, images of the matches played. Each one showed something that had never been seen before, the birth of a truly universal way of fighting and learning and growing together. 1 month after the tournament, Taejun stood in Principal Engster's office, looking out at the stars. The academy had changed. New buildings were under construction, expanding the combat training areas. Students of all species practiced together in the courtyards below. The board of directors has made their decision, Principal Engster said, her skin sparkling brightly. They want to create a permanent interspecies combat program, and they want you to lead it. Taejun turned from the window. Lead it? You've proven that different species can learn from each other, she said. The tournament showed everyone what's possible. Now we want to make it official. The door opened, and Hana walked in with a data pad. The application numbers for next term are incredible, she said. We have students from 50 new species wanting to learn human techniques. And look at this. She showed them a news report. Other academies across the galaxy were starting similar programs. The change they had started was spreading. There's more, Principal Engster said. The Galactic Peace Council was impressed by how our students handled the crisis with Rel. They want to use our program as a model for their peacekeeping forces. Taejun thought about how far they had come. Just months ago, he had been unsure about teaching aliens. Now his students were changing the galaxy. What about the traditional combat alliance? He asked. See for yourself, Hana said, pointing out the window. In one of the practice yards, several former protesters were training with Mick and Rix. The traditional instructors were learning human techniques while sharing their own ancient wisdom. They understand now, Principal Engster said. Strength comes from growing together, not staying apart. Do-Yum burst into the office, excited. You have to see this. He activated a hologram showing a training session. Students were creating new moves that had never existed before. Combinations of human and alien techniques that worked for any species. Your sister would be proud, Hana said softly, remembering the team members Taejun had lost in the war. This is what peace really looks like. Taejun nodded. Captain Yoon had always said that understanding was the key to peace. Now her words were coming true in ways she could never have imagined. I'll do it, he said, but I want to make some changes. Over the next few days, Taejun worked with his students to design the new program. Mick would teach a class on adapting techniques for different gravity levels. Rix would show how to combine energy forms with physical movements. Professor Kuehl agreed to help, her experience with traditional methods balancing the new approaches. Besides, she said, clicking her teeth in amusement, someone needs to keep you humans from getting too creative. The academy's main hall was packed again, but this time for a celebration. Students, teachers, and even some of Taejun's old military friends had come to see the launch of the new program. Today marks a new chapter, Principal Engster announced, not just for the